Cumberland School, Public Schools Building Renovation Committee to order at 6:02 p.m. and ask you to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the previous minutes, which we do not have prepared for this evening. So we're going to move to 4, which is COVID alternate estimates discussion and a vote. And who am I turning this over to you, Holly, first?
I believe Mike is going to pull up a document and we'll hand it over to Will.
Okay.
Okay. Should have the document up.
Yep. So here we have a document that's just describing some of the various COVID measures that we had recommended and that were priced up by the cost estimators for consideration. And I guess what we'll just do real quickly here for everyone is just run through the different measures that we talked about. So this first measure that we have here is bipolar ionization and ultraviolet lights. These are basically measures that allow disinfection of the air, so that if you have any viruses within the air, these can be broken down and deactivated by these disinfection devices. Some of the pros of these devices is that they are fairly inexpensive to install. They're also fairly widely known. Ultraviolet lights have been used in the hospital industry for a long time, so they're well recognized. Some of the cons for these type of devices is that the efficacy of these devices varies widely, and it depends on contact time and various other factors that are hard to evaluate. You know, there's no national standards for any of these items, no standardized measures for quantification of their effectiveness. So it's a case of really installing them and you know, just hoping for the best results based upon past experience. So that's disinfection. So the next measure that we wanted to talk about was ventilation. So ventilation is, as we probably all know, is the introduction of fresh air or the dilution of the space air with fresh air. Obviously, we're assuming that the outside air has little or no viral contamination. So introducing outside air is one of the means of creating a lower viral count within the space. So one of the means of enhancing or at least measuring ventilation within the space is airflow monitoring stations. And what these do is they're monitoring devices placed within the outside air intake of an HVAC unit, and so that it can measure the amount of outside air that is being brought into the space. It allows you to quantify the amount of outside air that you're bringing in, and it also allows you to change it quantitatively over time and monitor the amount of outside air that's being brought in. So, well, yes.
Quick question, if I could.
Yep.
Does this allow you to control sort of like the dilution factor of outside to inside, or is this strictly just monitoring?
It could be used through a central control system to allow you to control the outside air. In most cases, however, if you lack that central control system and you're retrofitting this, it would just be a means of measurement and quantification.
So for the implementation that we're talking here, it would just be a monitoring only.
That's right. In most of these cases, it's going to be monitoring only.
Okay, thank you.
So as I said, one of the pros of this airflow monitoring station is we know exactly how much outside air we're bringing in at any one time. And if we wanted to modify how much outside air we were bringing in, let's say it was a warm day and we wanted to increase the ventilation, we could then measure how much we had increased the ventilation during that time period. Some of the negative aspects of this airflow measurement station is it's fairly expensive to install. And like we talked about, it's not actually bringing in more outside air or allowing you to bring in more outside air by creating more capacity. What it's doing is it's just measuring, monitoring and measuring the amount of outside air that you're bringing in. So this was one of the ventilation measures that we looked at. So another ventilation measure that we looked at is called Purge Controls. And these are just controls that are programmed into the equipment that allows ventilation to be timed and also to be increased during certain periods of time. So for example, one way that the Purge Controls works is that it will increase the amount of outside air that's being brought in directly before and directly after the space is occupied. It can also create a delay so that once the space is vacated, it continues to ventilate to basically purge the space with fresh air. These controls are obviously much more easily implemented where you have a new installation, where you have new direct digital control system. Difficult to implement where you have no central control system. Pretty much would be cost prohibitive to try and do it in a building where you did not have central controls. The other slight con, which is not really one that we would think would change anybody's mind in this environment, but it may result in increased operational cost to temper that outside air for that extended period of time to allow the purge controls to work. Okay, so now we're on to filtration. So we talked about disinfection, we talked about ventilation, and the third means of reducing the airborne aerosol count is filtration. Filtration basically meaning recirculation of system air through a high efficiency filter, hopefully removing infectious aerosols at the filter itself. So there's been a lot of talk about MERV 13 and MERV 14 filters with COVID. And these filters work pretty well at removing larger particles. They're much better than the standard filter, which is a MERV 8. You know, for a comparison's sake, a MERV 8 has a dust spot efficiency of 30 to 35%, whereas a MERV 13 has an efficiency of 80 to 90%. Obviously, where you install higher efficiency filters, you're going to have more of a resistance to the airflow. So they usually cannot be just retrofitted without looking into equipment motor sizes and fan capacities and things like that. But the thought process is with a higher efficiency filter, you're able to filter out some of those infectious aerosols to help clean the space. The pros of this is that MERV 13s are relatively inexpensive to install in new installations. You obviously have to make sure that the equipment can handle that airflow resistance, but most commercial equipment can handle a MERV 13 filter as long as they have a 2-inch deep filter rack. Some of the cons of the MERV 13 filter is, as we were saying, older equipment is really not going to be able to handle the MERV 13 resistance, especially with the existing 1-inch filter racks. So you could have issues with motors and motor failure. The other downside to the MERV 13 and MERV 14 is that they're really only effective in temperate weather, meaning when the humidity is between 40 and 60%. And the reason for this is the particulate size changes. The water droplet particulate size that is generated and stays airborne, actually the size decreases as the humidity levels drop due to evaporation. So as you get into the winter time, where the humidity levels are low, MERV 13s and MERV 14s become much less effective in capturing those infectious aerosols. So it's really, a MERV 13 filter is really only going to be effective year-round if you can add humidification to the air. And that's not always possible, especially in existing schools because of various envelope issues. So the MERV 13 is a less expensive, more widely retrofittable filter that can be put into equipment. However, if you can't provide humidity or humidification, as happens all around New England in the wintertime, it's going to be less effective. Which brings us to the next option, which is also another means of filtration, a much higher efficiency type of filtration called Hepa filtration. So Hepa stands for high efficiency particulate air. And we typically see Hepa filters in clean rooms, hospitals, operating rooms, and other critical areas. And they're basically put in there to maintain cleanliness and remove airborne contaminants from the air. They're highly efficient. They recirculate and they scrub the air. And unlike MERV 13, they're efficient enough to remove infectious aerosols, even at their smaller sizes in a low humidity environment. So they're superior to the MERV 13 in that you don't have to worry about humidification or humidity levels within the space. So the pros, as we said, works well in all humidity levels. They're universally effective so that if you have proper air change rates with a Hepa unit, it can eliminate the need for extra disinfection and ventilation measures, because if it goes through the Hepa unit, it's just as fresh as outside air. And if it goes through the Hepa unit, it's removed all of the infectious aerosols the way that disinfection would as well. We're talking about standalone HEPA units, either a portable unit that sits on the floor or a permanent unit that sits in the ceiling. It would be very difficult to incorporate HEPA filters into an existing HVAC system or even a new classroom HVAC system, just because of the high pressure drop that's associated with it. So it would be a standalone solution. It works well in larger open rooms like classrooms. You know, a normal, or let's say a medium to large size portable HEPA unit, or a 2x4 fan-powered HEPA unit that you would put in a 2x4 acoustical tile ceiling. Those both provide a suitable number of air changes for a classroom environment per the CDC and ASHRAE regulations or recommendations. Some of the downsides to a standalone fan-forced HEPA unit would be that they can be expensive to purchase, and also the installation is expensive if you're talking about a permanent ceiling type situation. Ceiling type is slightly more desirable in terms of effectiveness, just because a portable unit is going to be you know, probably stuck in a corner somewhere, whereas a ceiling mounted HEPA unit could be located centrally and probably provide a better ventilation effectiveness. So you're going to pay extra, obviously, for a fixed ceiling type installation, but you're going to gain a little bit in ventilation effectiveness. The cons, again, like we said, it cannot be easily retrofitted into existing or new equipment because there is an excessive pressure drop, a resistance to airflow created by the HEPA unit. That's why it's so good at removing those particles. And it's also difficult to implement into smaller segmented spaces like offices, just because the offices are smaller. You know, portable units, you could get smaller portable units for offices. But a larger ceiling type permanent installation would probably not work well in small segmented offices. So that's just a quick rundown of, I think, all the options that we looked at and had priced up for consideration to be added or to be paired with the HVAC systems that are currently under design.
Will, a question if I could.
Sure.
Are these kind of, each one's kind of stands on its own, or are there ones that you'd combine? And if you did these, you wouldn't do those if you follow? Like, can these be grouped together in kind of like effective pairs,
Yeah,
or what have you, groups?
I think, as I was trying to say with the HEPA discussion, I think the HEPA units really really do solve a lot of problems if you can get all the air changes. I would consider, you know, if we had MERV 13, which is not as efficient as the HEPAs, I would probably want to pair that with some bipolar ionization or UV in order to disinfect, you know, kind of have a few different measures in place. And I'd also like to incorporate the ventilation measures, just because the only one measure that I see that kind of checks all the boxes is the HEPA filters. So if you wanted to stay away from the HEPA filters, or you couldn't manage the HEPA filters, or there was a concern regarding, you know, the cost for HEPA filters, then I would recommend looking at, you know, combining a few items, a few of the other items, the disinfection and the ventilation, as well as the MERV 13 filtration. You know, all of these are measures that are recommended, you know, by ASHRAE and the CDC. You know, there's really not, one that's better than the others. It's really something that is meant to be applied in a kind of in a group situation, except for perhaps, like I was saying, the HEPA units, because those really can remove 100% of the infectious aerosols.
So if you were to group, you'd be doing bipolar ionization, the MERV 13, and the Purge sequence controls.
Right. I think I'd like to combine those if we didn't have the HEPAs. And
Okay.
even with the HEPAs, I think Purge controls are not a bad idea, because I think, especially if they're easily implemented.
Okay.
In where we have new control systems, I don't think it's a significant cost to add that Purge control. And I think it just adds another level of effectiveness.
How about the airflow station? I basically, kind of what I heard was that, you can monitor it and you can see what's going on, but you can't change anything the way our system's currently set up. And basically, if you wanted to, like, let's say, make a change for, we'll call it summer mode versus winter mode, you could go up there and make those measurements when you did that mechanical change, correct?
Right. It just makes it a lot more convenient and quantifiable if you have the airflow station.
Okay. So I guess to summarize, bipolar, MERV, Purge, and maybe airflow, or HEPA, Purge, and maybe airflow.
Right. Yeah, I think if you have the HEPA, you can probably get rid of the bipolar and the UV. The bipolar and UV, I think I would pair more with the MERV 13 because of its lack of effectiveness in the lower humidity.
That makes sense. Okay, I guess unless there's more comments, questions, or conversations, I'm just kind of curious about the cost totals, because in the end, we want to make a decision tonight, hopefully, on whether or not this is worth doing.
Yeah, let me just jump in here for a minute. So just so I understand, when you talk about the standalone fan forced HEPA units, are those the units that are currently in the buildings in the schools, or are these additional?
I'm not sure what's being used in the schools. I was told that the school does have a certain number of portable HEPA units. So I think that might be what you're referring to. And if in that case, those are HEPA filtration units.
So the 300 that were given by the state are those units, Mayor?
Right.
Yeah.
Have they been installed? Are those operating now?
Is Alex on here?
Yes, they do. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So just so I know the district purchased some units, and then there were some that were delivered by the state. Are they similar, or I'm just trying to get a handle on because I mean, Alex, you remember that conversation that we had with whoever those people were from the state, and I'm just trying to get a handle on. So in other words, if we're going to go with these standalone fan forced HEPA units, we already have them. Is that true?
My understanding is you have 300 from the state.
200 units we have. Right, the 200 we bought that we purchased from per hour. The 300 that the state gave us are double the size, and they changed the air 4 times, changing the air 4 times an hour.
Right, I would say that the 300,
So those units do it all by themselves.
Hey, Alex, your
Windows
audio
are
really
open,
stinks.
Whether anything else is going on.
Alex, we can't hear you. Your audio is all muffled.
I'll shut the video off. May come in better.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I was speaking to our.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
I just thought of that. You got 2 Mr. Mayors.
I thought you were just being formal.
Can I say Jeff instead? Jeff, it's Mark Lingren. I'm guessing that the units that the state provided and the ones that the town bought are probably portable units,
Can you
something
hear
that
me?
is akin to
Still all muffled.
like a dehumidifier or something like that. It sits on the floor. It's probably portable. You can wheel it around. The fan-powered units that Will is talking about are meant to be hung from the structure, typically in a suspended ceiling. Once they're in, they stay in. You don't get to move them around, at least not conveniently.
Right.
It's more of a permanent installation.
Okay. So the ones that's what I'm trying to get to. So I don't think I've actually physically seen the ones from the state, but if they're going to comply or they're going to get the job done, obviously, that's important to know. If the other ones are not, that's also, important. So that's really what I'm trying to get to, because I mean, some of the ones that the district bought, we actually used down at Town Hall, and yeah, they're just these small units. I mean, I have one right here in the conference room, and if that's there was some trepidation when we had that meeting with the state that these units were going to suffice. So that's I'm just trying. If there's a unit that whether you hang it or you put it on the floor or whatever, and that is going to get the job done, that's what I'm looking to know.
Yeah, the units from the state, we looked, and from what we could glean from the information online, it looked like those would be suitable for a classroom. Whereas the smaller ones, I think that the town purchased, are probably better used in administration offices and things like that.
Okay.
Can I add some comments here? I had similar questions, and while I believe that the ones that were donated are capable, I think they're considered really residential units at best, would probably have a finite life. And if we choose or we don't have the money to spend, they will do a decent job for, a year or two, probably, assuming we change the filters. Some of the other downsides, though, are really just that it would not be optimally placed in the classroom. It'd probably be tucked into a corner or something. And so its effectiveness would be hampered by those choices that would get changed, I'm sure, by the day, potentially in a particular classroom. The other thing is to get the circulation that was described. These units would be operating basically on high, and the stated sound level in decibels is 70, which is equivalent to your classic vacuum cleaner type of noise level. If you look up 70 dBs on the internet, they'll say typically a vacuum is 70 dBs. To put in perspective, the ceiling units are rated at 53, which is much less sound-wise. So they'd be a lot more innocuous and centrally located in the ceiling. So you're talking like a better long-term implementation there, if you choose to spend the money on them. If you don't, then you can probably get by. I would probably liken it to those buildings where you see they decided not to do and pay the price for central AC, and then they've got a bunch of home AC units hanging out of every single window. And ultimately those things, wear out, they're not maintained and ultimately should be replaced, but they definitely don't find the money to replace those in any sort of timely manner. So I think you're really talking the difference between a residential quality unit versus something that really is, commercial or institutional quantity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As Mark stated, these are commercial fan powered units that are basically installed and are there somewhat permanently.
So we have a summary of cost. Louis, did you want to look at plans, or do you think that's necessary? Or we can go to the summary of cost?
Holly,
Hold on,
excuse me, if I
hold
can
on.
just make one more point.
Yes.
The point I was going to make is that currently, if you have these portable units, they're not tied into any sort of central system. And I guess it's part of a question. If you had these mounted in the ceiling, the commercial versions, institutional versions, would you be able to tie those into the purge control so they're automatically run ahead of occupancy and after occupancy and all that type of stuff? Would that be the intent?
Yeah, I mean, they're really like turning on a light switch. So they could be controlled with a timer. They could be controlled by the central control system on a schedule. It's a fan that you're turning on and off. So it would be easy enough if you've got the controls there to tie it into the control system and provide it with a schedule.
Isn't this assuming we have ductwork throughout the buildings?
Nope, these just sit in the ceiling. They're recirculation only. They don't have to tie into any ductwork.
Will, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
At that point, the area above the ceiling becomes a plenum?
Correct, unless we duct it down into a return grill at the ceiling. But yes, we'd have to evaluate that, and I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah, and that could be a bigger deal than anybody wants to get involved with.
Right. We want to make sure that the ceiling cavity doesn't have anything in it that's not plenum rated. Otherwise, we'd have to put a short piece of ductwork onto it and duct it down into the ceiling.
So I'm guessing that in buildings that are 40 or 50 years old, you can pretty much be guaranteed that nothing up there is plenum rated.
Well, I mean, if we're dealing with steel construction, I think what we would have to worry about is, roof drainage and maybe low voltage cabling.
Typically, all of the electrical, all of the insulation on all the wiring needs to be plenum rated.
Yeah, they shouldn't have any Romex or anything like that in there for power wiring. It should all be either metal clad or conduit. But I agree with you. It definitely has to be. It's definitely a valid concern. The way to take that off the table is really just to create a small piece of ductwork off of the top of the fan powered unit that would duct into the ceiling.
So in a typical size classroom, how many Hepas are you talking about to get a minimum air exchange rate required by code? I mean, it's got to be more than one.
No, it's about one. We looked at it. 600 CFM is about what you want to get your 4 to 5 air changes. 2 air changes is the minimum that ASHRAE and the CDC is looking for in terms of fresh air. But in order to get 4 to 5 air changes, a 600 CFM unit, which is a 2x4 fan powered unit, that's on low speed. if you run it on high speed, I think they get up to around
960.
800 or 900 CFM. So it's actually 1 2x4 unit is very well suited or very well sized for a typical, say 1,000 square foot classroom.
Does that meet building code requirements for air exchange? Aren't there minimums?
We're meeting air exchange in terms of fresh air with the HVAC system. There's really no requirement for this HEPA unit. We're adding it as an additional measure of safety.
Will, question.
If we weren't dealing with COVID right now, there's no way we'd be putting HEPA filters in the ceiling. It's not.
I'm still not sure we should, and that, I guess,
right,
will be a discussion that we take up at some point in time. I guess, I'm wondering that, the kids come to school, they go home into an atmosphere that's not conditioned typically in any way, shape, or form other than air conditioning in the summertime, maybe, and certainly heat in the wintertime. A lot of them go to a job where, they may work in a supermarket or a retail store. There is nothing like this in any of those facilities that I'm typically aware of. We seem to be wanting to do something here, and while I understand the desire to do what's best, they're in school for X number of hours a day, 6 hours a day. The other 18 hours, they go places where typically we don't have these kind of controls. So, is there any discussion at all as to why we're doing this?
This is to prevent and basically give people the confidence to come into school, stay there, even if some kid shows up or some teacher shows up that has it. With this type of filtration, you're minimizing the likelihood of transfer. So it really is a insurance policy to some degree. And ultimately, I think districts that have done some work here are going to be more attractive in terms of having their teachers and students back in school. And ultimately, that's going to lead to people who choose what town they want to be in terms of house values and whatnot. That's how I was thinking about it.
Can I ask the people from Colliers if Lincoln is doing this right now in their renovations?
They're doing the high school right now, so I don't know what the specifications are for the MEPs and all, but I haven't heard specifically. A lot of the districts are looking at their univents and making sure they're running for fresh air primarily. And because the state has given these systems to most of the towns, I know that Pawtucket received about 500 of them. They're placing them in the classrooms, and most of the districts did exactly what Cumberland did and bought the smaller versions because that's what was available. And they're using those in the administrative offices, and then they're using those that came in from the state in the classrooms.
So, yeah, let me jump in here. Obviously, the state, there was a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it politics or whatever, but certainly, which I keep repeating about adults not trying hard enough. And then we had a meeting and the state, unequivocally said that if you put this unit that they're going to send to the district, you put that into a room that has no windows or no ventilation, you're still good to go. And I think, as Rick said, people, obviously, everyone feels that, in-person learning is preferential to distance learning. And there's a lot of anxiety, with, teachers and I'm sure, everyone involved when you have the situation that we're dealing with. And so, if I think we would definitely be second guessed. And I've said that before, that if you're going to do construction, you're not going to do any of that. I do understand the point that they're not, they're in environments that are not perhaps as well treated, if you will. But that doesn't give us the luxury of following suit. So I think it's a balance, though. I mean, so that's really where I'm at. If these standalone units that the state gave get the job done, but they don't hang from the ceiling, that's still a level of comfort that without them, my level of comfort wouldn't be as high. So there's different units, right? There's some you put on the ground. There's some you hang up in the ceiling. In layman's terms here, right? So the ones that the state gave us, those are not units that go up in the ceiling. They cannot be put up in the ceiling. They're floor mounted, right?
Correct.
Or they're standalone. Okay. And so we can move on to the next. So the prices that are shown here, are those for the ones that are put in the ceiling?
Yes.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to that.
So Mike, you have the summary of the cost?
We were going to take a minute, if possible, to show you the level of investigations that went in. So what we did was we took the different methods that Will described and apply them to the existing buildings and the proposed mechanical systems. We created a number of categories, whether it was an area of the building that had unit ventilators, or they had a ducted system or a rooftop unit. We did that for every elementary school, and that's how the prices were arrived. Robert, do you have that drawing that you could put up?
Do you want the drawing first?
Yes, that's what when we went through the rehearsal, we were going to do Will, then we're going to show a sample of the categories that were developed by illustrating Cumberland Hill. Then we'll go on to the spreadsheet. So if you want to go ahead, Robert, you can describe it.
No, you go ahead.
So this illustrates typically what we did for every building, and that we analyzed new systems and the various existing systems that were going to be upgraded, and we applied all of the COVID enhancements that were applicable for that system. So when you see these number of categories that we identified, that's what you'll see broken down in the cost estimates. I don't think we need to go through this for every building, but this illustrates that level of detail. With that, Robert, you can go on to the cost spreadsheet.
So this spreadsheet, basically what we did, because we did a more detailed breakdown per school that matches the categories that we identified on the drawings, and that identified numbers for each one of those. And then in this spreadsheet, what we did is we broke down per each of the categories that Will went over, and then broke it down vertically per school. So if you decide, for example, what if we only did bipolar ionization, you went across, added up for each school, that would be the total that you came to, versus if you did it, what if we just did each school, that would be the total for each school. And so, Mike, I believe like when you just had it up a minute ago, the screen where you had the different ones, the one for just HEPA, for example, that we were asked to look at.
Can you just stop your screen share? I'll bring those up.
Where did that go? Stop share. There you go.
Do you want to start with this one, Louis, or the?
No, we already went through that.
No. If you go back, it was files 2 and 2A. So here was just this is
And that's
what
the updated
what
one.
we're just talking, right? This is the updated one, because what this was is, so all of these schools here, including the pre-K at the trans building, this is all the elementary schools that we were asked to focus on during the stage two. The committee had made the decision to work primarily at the elementary school level. And so these would be COVID upgrades to those major renovations that are getting new mechanical systems anyways. So we've moved the high school space outside of that subtotal column, because this would be back during stage two when it was made the decision not to do new systems at the middle schools and the high school. You know, you guys decided not to do that, but this would be the number, because we were asked to look at, well, what could we do to improve situations like at the high school where the systems aren't that good. And so that would be what that number in the last column is. And then the 2A, here we were this was asking, what if we just focused on the Hepa filters, which would be similar to those classroom units that the state gave you, but this would be the more permanent in commercial, hung from the ceiling type, rather than the portable one. And so that would be the numbers if you just focused on the Hepa that we were asked to look at.
So the 1.8 would be all of the elementary schools plus the trans building at 1.8.
Yes.
Okay.
So the numbers that we're looking at there for the 1.839, 1.6, is that, I mean, is that, for lack of better terminology, is that parts and labor? Is that the whole show? Is that what it's estimated to cost?
Yes, that is. Go ahead.
That's for the construction costs, labor and material. That does not include soft costs associated with that.
Okay.
That also has the architectural piece of it that's related to, especially when they're in a hard ceiling.
Yes.
So that's.
And by that is the architectural work, not the architectural.
Right.
And is it accurate to say that, I mean, you could, if you separated this into like its own separate project, this could be done at any time along the way, or is this something that, you know, in the two schools that we're about, something done right now to you know, to get this ready, if you will?
I would think that ideally you want to incorporate it with the work that we're doing in this initial phase.
Right, I don't know if the cost estimator, you know, kind of included that some work would be done in those ceilings anyway,
Right.
or if this is a standalone cost, but there's obviously some efficiencies if it's done at the same time. But theoretically, from a mechanical standpoint, you could, because this is not necessarily tied into any of the existing systems, it could be implemented in the future.
Yeah, I believe these numbers are based on the efficiencies of doing it at the same time as you do everything else. And so these numbers are just like additional work, and that if you chose to do it at a different time, it's not that you couldn't do it, but there might be some additional costs, just startup costs,
Right.
because this is based on the fact that they're already on the job doing work, and this is just a little bit more extra work they're doing.
Right.
So this is HEPA. We talked about HEPA. standing alone, adding potentially purge sequence controls, which is another 145. So basically $2 million, again, putting aside the high school. And I think in the prior spreadsheet, there was another million in RTUs that related to the high school trans building. Was that part of this kind of COVID assessment, or is that, a mistake?
Louis,
No,
Louis,
that-
do you want to answer that?
Yes, all of the work that we've identified at the high school is COVID related. So that rooftop unit is meant to service a space that has no exterior windows. And so to do that space, we needed to provide a rooftop unit.
Okay,
And
so can you click on the tab there, tab 2? RTU, $1 million, high school trans building. Can anybody explain how that helps this situation, or is that just an arbitrary $1 million thrown in there?
No, so that space, Robert, and you need to help me if that is all of the rooftop units or the one for the administration building.
That's all of them.
Yeah, so can we go?
That is for the swing space admin, for the district admin, for the
Superintendent's
wing to
office.
the district admin. So that's 3 units.
If you want to focus in on that one, we can give you the exact breakdown of what makes up that $1 million.
Well, you don't have to do that. My question really was, if you were going to bundle this together and say, okay, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. My understanding was you've got HEPA, you've got purge sequence control, you've got associated architectural stuff, and it sounds like the RTUs also. Is that correct? Just in terms of summing it up?
Yes, Rick, of all of the RTUs, one of those is in the admin and nursing area, and that should happen. The other 2 would be nice to have, but not necessary.
Okay. So is the $1 million the 2 nice to have units, or does it include the one you already planned on?
Robert, can you go to the breakdown of the rooftop units, please?
I just want to get a total.
Yeah,
No,
we have that.
We have that information.
Yeah, it's on the one, Mike, it's on the high school, which I think is the last one.
This one here?
Yeah.
Robert, can you just briefly go through this with the committee, please?
Right. So these, you see the categories that related to the plan. So the category 2 is the new unit vents at the classrooms for both the elementary swing space that would later be the pre-K. So now there's not a unit cost in there because that's already in the project and already budgeted for. So these numbers would just be to make improvements to these are just all COVID ads for those unit vents that you're getting anyways. These are the 3 RTUs. So the first one is the RTU for the swing space admin, which is the nurse's office and whatnot for that elementary and pre-K. The unit itself is 338, and then we break down all the COVID ads if you chose to do COVID on top of that. And then these are the prices for the other ones. For
Robert, quick question. So RTU 4, is that already in the plan or not?
It is not. It is not the schematic design that was submitted.
Okay, RTU 3, is that in the plan?
No, none of the rooftop units are.
Okay, what about the nurses station?
That's
You just-
No, that was not submitted in the schematic, but would be
Okay.
submitted with the DD.
I do want to clarify something with the first thing that Robert said about the unit ventilators. They're existing to the project, but this is the part of the project that we're shifting from the second phase to the first phase to provide those unit ventilators now.
That's why there's no cost shown.
That's right, because that
Great.
cost is shifted from the next phase.
So RTU number 4 is not already included in the plan and has nothing to do with the nurses' environment.
That is what we will have to put into the plan, correct, Louis? We do need that.
The stage 2 submitted did not include a rooftop unit for the nurse's office. This came out of COVID and the requirement that RIDE wanted to have negative pressure in the clinics. And so that's what started the issue of providing a rooftop unit.
For that
Okay,
specific area.
So let's say we were not talking about COVID at all. Would you be looking for basically permission from the building committee to add this cost because RIDE said we should be?
Well, it is related to COVID and that
I know it is.
RIDE said we should do it because they want to see negative pressure in school clinics.
Okay, so if we say no to everything, would you still be advocating for that or not?
Absolutely, yes. I think that's the one rooftop unit we need to do.
Okay, so that one's happening regardless. But we've included it in the cost here. So really the optional increase is about $660K for RTU 3 and 2.
Yes.
Okay. Can we go back to the 2A tab, please? So in summary, we've got, if HEPA's were the choice, it'd be the 1.8 plus another 150,000 for Purge. So it's 2 million plus another 660. So it's 2.6 to really do something beyond residential HEPA treatment. And I guess to kind of finish the summary, high school, which is not part of this plan right now, would be another million. So we got 2.6 plus another 1.0. And then we didn't talk about the air conditioning, but that was 2.5 overall. So 6.1 plus we've got another 330K of nurses RTU unit that's going to happen regardless, it sounds like. So that really kind of leaves us with, is this something we want to afford to do, or do we want to stick with residential solutions and cross our fingers for the long haul? I think that's kind of what it is. And if we have no money available to this, then that's what we'll have to do, obviously. Mr. Chairman, is there anything that you can offer in terms of whether this is feasible or not? I know there's a $4 million gap between what RIDE approved and, could this be, kind of like another application to RIDE that's basically all safety, if you want to call it that, and be eligible for reimbursements as it relates to safety?
Yeah, I think it's the only option you can look at, because you're obviously not going to pick the two schools that we're talking about right now and then not do, or what you're going to do one of the elementary schools in the swing space and then not do the other ones if you couldn't find the money. So I think the only way to look at it is to try to craft it as a separate project, and maybe there'd have to be some advocacy that we've talked about before, as far as warm, safe, and dry. but I don't see any way at this point where, we could be looking at a 2.63 million and then, another million for the high school. Yeah, it's not feasible inside the, the current allocation, to me, at this point.
Yeah, so that's a longer term process, I would speculate. If we were to pursue that, I guess what are the odds that they would approve it? And can we find the 800K to deal with the two schools that are, about ready to go through all this process?
Well, we've already got okay. It wouldn't be, the voters approved 83 million and we've talked to bond council about that. So you could separate the project and you have the okay. You still have to go through the legislative hurdles of getting that approved by, school committee and town council. But I'm hesitant, I don't know. I don't want to speak for the committee, but obviously, to go for the two schools right now, to me that would commit us to the I wouldn't feel right doing that. And then, finding out that you couldn't get approval for to borrow another 4 million. I think that's a discussion you have to have, with the powers that be before you make any commitments. And as I've said, I wouldn't feel right making the commitments for two unless I felt I had every intention of doing the rest of them, which I couldn't.
Makes sense. Well, I guess I want to thank everybody who put the time and effort into reviewing all of this to come up with what seems to be decent numbers for each of the schools as it relates to the upgrades that they're going through and will be going through. So at this point, we've got what it would cost. I think it's, up to the committee to decide, hey, is this worth pursuing further and jumping through the required hoops that Chairman just mentioned, or if we just, cut it loose at this point and forge on as is.
Anyone from the committee have a comment or? I do echo the Rick's comments as far as it's good to have gone through. I do appreciate the exercise and to put it into as close as possible in the layman's terms. I think I have it pretty much an understanding, although not as good as I'd like to. But I do appreciate that, and I do think it's important to have it on the record, but that might just be the politician in me and not the building committee member. So I do appreciate that work. Alex, did you have something? I see you back on.
I'm here.
So
I'm back. I'm unmuted, Tony.
All right.
We can hear you now.
All right.
All right, so it has on the agenda the discussion and a vote. So there really isn't a vote that's necessary here, unless the committee feels need to take one. I mean, Holly, what's the practical reality here for moving the project along? If you could just.
Sure. Well, right now, we need to decide if any of this is going to be included in DD in the design development stage, so it can be any changes would have to move forward to RIDE. So from a budget perspective, the worst that one thing we have to really manage is the schedule because they're all tied together, as we discussed many times. So at this point, the reason why we had vote on there is if it was something that you were really considering, we needed to understand that and the impact that would have going forward. So, you know, especially for the scale, depending on the scale that you would decide with. So if we're deciding now if the building committee is deciding that they're not going to move forward with this and perhaps would go down another path later from another financial, you know, commitment, then there really isn't a vote. We'll just keep pushing the way we, you know, the SD is there and we'll do the DD as designed. But we just needed to go, you know, a green light from the committee with that directive.
Okay, so, you know, thank you, Holly. Yeah, I don't, someone has another feeling, I don't see how we can make the commitment for that amount inside the, you know, the current plan. It would have to be, you know, a standalone thing, which we would have to really set the stage for, you know, to get done potentially in the future. I don't think it's something that we can commit to today. But if there's someone who would like to have a formal vote on that or feels different,
I have a question,
speak here.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Rick.
So RIDE has approved a project scope of 79 million, which has, you know, lots of contingencies, et cetera, in it. But that leaves us with 4 million additional that the voters have already approved. I understand the need for, I'd say, getting some additional approvals, you know, via, you know, school committee, you know, via town council, et cetera. But if those approvals were obtained, isn't that, you know, regardless of what project might be put before the state at some point, couldn't we choose to use that $4 million excess that the voters already approved for these purposes?
So,
I think we're going to need that $4 million to get us through the 5-year project.
I think so.
no, I think, if you don't mind, I'll interject here. So the bond was for 83 approval, and then the state approved 79. So if you wanted to get housing aid for the balance of the 4, you would have to start with a new stage 1.
Of course.
Right, into stage 2, which takes their very defined windows of time, right? So they're due in the fall, and then so that takes at least a year.
Too long.
Right. So that's the rub there. So it would have to be, you'd have to create a very specific project for that $4 million, which would be typically 20% of that is soft cost. So a $3.8 or so million, $2.8 million project.
Yeah, if we were to be looking for, you know, a reimbursement from RIDE.
Right.
But
that's
the
only way,
voters
right.
have already approved an $83 million bond, of which we've got 79 of it planned. So we could just use it without seeking reimbursement to implement these ads.
I don't think you can, because Jeff, didn't the town council put the minimum reimbursement on as a contingency for taking that money?
Yeah, that is true. There is there's the 50% reimbursement that was attached to the 83 million. So that is an obstacle that we'd have to discuss with you know, with bond counsel, because you're right, there was that stipulation.
So that's 41.5 of reimbursement. Do we know what we're getting on the 79?
Well, no, we don't exactly know. Remember, we got approval based on if we kind of did what we said we were going to do, then we have a letter that says that we would at least get the
58, I believe.
50%. Right. It obviously it's projected to be higher than that, but
58.
But yeah, a project that did not, and without bonus point, 50%. So it would have to qualify somehow for some sort of bonus points, because I believe that, we're slated to even have a reduction, a further reduction in that rate for 2022. So that
And it
is
would,
a obstacle.
yes, and it would also have to, the work would have to be contracted completely by December 2022 for the bonus points. So it is, because of the structure of the stage 1 and 2 and how it's approved and the deadlines that they have created for the bonus points, we're backing up against that now.
So Alex, did you say we're expecting 58%?
I believe it was 58% that they're estimating we'd get.
Okay, so 58% of 79 million
Yeah,
is
it's more than the 40.
45.8, which is definitely over the 50% mark for the 83. So I think Mark's comment is a valid one, but if it looks like we're poised for obtaining that and surpassing that 50% mark, then that's shouldn't be a concern unless they change the rules down the road.
Right. You'd be speaking of averaging it out. If you've got 58 or more of 79 million and you got 40% of 4, you might, when you put that in the aggregate, you might still be over the 50%. And
Well, you are over the 50%.
Right. It would comply.
58% of 83, or excuse me, 79 is 45, almost 46 million. Half of 83 is 41.2. So you're beating it by, almost $5 million currently.
No.
My math's wrong?
No. I think, remember, there's none of it's carved in stone. It's right. So even as Alex said, I mean, it's projected to be the 58, but yes, as long as in aggregate, you borrowed $83 million and you were assured of getting at least 41.5, then you would be compliant with the legislation that the council passed and the voters voted for. I don't think the problem is that, there's nothing carved in stone right now. It's all projected to be at a certain number, and, obviously we're going to do everything we can to make sure that it does.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of stuck with, somebody's promised us a certain fuel mileage if we buy the car, but we're not going to be able to test it until we drive it all the way across the country, and be a shoulder shrug if we miss it we're at 49%. I don't know how you can be held to that type of bit of random, and honestly, it was a little bit of I think a sleight of hand trick that we got duped into that. Because like you say, nothing's guaranteed here. And you really have to do the project to see where you end up. And so you can't undo it once you do it, I guess is the problem.
Is there money built into that 79 for some sort of a contingency? A cost overruns or estimates or bids that come in higher than estimates?
Yes, we'll manage the budgets. That's why there's soft cost, and we do have contingencies in there for construction.
Yeah, about 6 million.
I just wonder also if there are things within the budget today that may not be used because maybe a collaborative workspace we may not do a year or two from now because of COVID. Does that change any of the plan?
It wouldn't change the bonuses, because that would be reviewed. Every project is going to be reviewed by RIDE as the the COVID process is happening. Right. So the first 2 schools will go in and then they'll be looking, perhaps you're right, perhaps in year 3, and if they're looking at learning commons or something for that particular school, they may say, well, maybe we should do it this way based on what we've experienced, and they'll switch it for that school, but it wouldn't affect the bonus points. The way they're broken down, it's health and safety and educational enhancements. They're very defined. So, I think RIDE will work with the district as each of these projects are designed.
But could you potentially save money because there are things we wouldn't be doing because they're not recommended anymore?
I can't imagine them switching the common learning areas. I mean, Robert or Lewis, you feel free to jump in. I mean, they would probably be interesting to see if they require more square footage, perhaps, so that kids have space. But when I've approached Riot about this, and basically what they're talking about is fresh air and in surfaces that can be cleaned and things like that they can control much more so than big design changes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I think in summary, unless we choose to, get the permissions from the various committees to put this in for future reimbursement and going through that process, that's kind of too late for the two existing schools for sure. That's why I was kind of suggesting, well, if you tally up what it is for these two schools and you potentially dip into that 4 million for that, let's say it's $1.5 million and you submit for all the balance, then that might be a way to kind of do both without hampering the current progress, to Holly's point.
All I can say is I think there's a lot of hurdles to making it happen. I had forgotten about the 50% because I had some discussions with people about alternate funding sources for a project like that. And so the question is, when you asked for the 83, was it all contingent upon a reimbursement? And I think it was. And so that is the one, that's the one loose end that I had with those discussions. So, and I just think that, this is a different situation, and I think it's important. I think having those measures with the Hepa, I think that's appropriate. More obviously, I think that's an understatement, especially now, and to be prepared. And even when you get down to regular flu and things like that, would keep teachers and kids in the building. I think that's important. But right now, we don't have a place to make it happen that I could actually stick the flag in the ground and feel good about. Feel that you can make it happen. So, in absence of that, I'm kind of at status quo right now.
If the portable units are functioning properly and are of a capacity that will handle whatever room they're in, why would that not suffice? I mean, it's like a window air conditioner. I'm sure the filters need to be changed. They need to be maintained every once in a while. I don't know what the portable ones look like. I'm sure something could break down on them at some point in time. There's got to be some sort of a circulating fan. If they're properly maintained, I mean, I think we've had, window units that have lasted for 10 years. I'm not sure you couldn't say the same thing about the portable units. At least under less than ideal conditions, at least it's a help in the classrooms. So, I still have a little bit of a problem with going, well above and beyond that for what hopefully is a temporary thing here. I know it's been a year and we're all sick of it, but it will go away at some point in time, or at least I hope it does. If not, we're all in much deeper than we want to be anyway. So, what percentage of the town's classrooms right now have their own portable units?
Well, I'll tell you, we went through a whole exercise and I mean, Alex might be able to speak, or maybe Mike, but I mean, there was a lot of work done, and, you know, kudos to the school department for getting it done. I mean, between the repairs they made and the units and the ones from the state, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think we did actually pretty well. And so I agree with you. I mean, I think right now we're not in a bad place. I mean, to get a little bit more permanent fix, you know, wouldn't be a bad idea, but you know, we don't have a path to get there right now. So what we have, I trust, is better than what we did have, and I'm told by people on the state level that it's compliant. So.
Well, I at this point, you know, had prefaced the questions about, you know, whether or not we could afford it, you know, and if we can't afford it, then yes, we have a bunch of residential units strewn about, which is great. But I think more importantly, should any of the taxpayers who approve this $83 million upgrade for the town schools were to ask, well, geez, have you done anything different COVID-wise? We can now say we looked at it pretty thoroughly, and we didn't have enough money to do so. So I think we're in a defensible position at this point.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could I just add something?
Sure.
All right, I just wanted to clarify. I know at Cumberland Hill, and again, one of the 5 elementary schools, we have a filter in every classroom. The custodians check it every day. And not only that, but also there is a filter in the nurse's office, the isolation room, my office, because I don't have a window, and the main office. So I feel as a individual going into the building every day, I feel that, you know, we do have the ventilation system and everything in place to meet those requirements. And the only other thing I wanted to say is, and I can't remember who said it, but I agree that what we do for, I know Cumberland Hill is the first school along with the transitional building on the list of that this first year as we do the renovations and upgrades, just to make sure we're consistent. I appreciate that we have this opportunity to be the first, but I want to, you know, speaking for my colleagues, that we all have that same opportunity for our buildings for improvements and upgrades. So thank you. I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're good. So we're going to move to item 5, which is high school energy management systems controls discussion. I don't know who has this one.
Alex, did you want to do that?
This is, you know, we're taking on the repairing and replacing univents at the trans building. There's 25 other univents in the pool wing that are in the same type of condition. And we feel that we need to address them. We have rooms that are so unhealthy, you know, 80 degrees during the day, some rooms no heat. They're a constant source of complaints from employees that work in those rooms. And we have $1.2 million, I understand, for univents and controls at the elementary schools. Some of the controls we need to update because we really had old controls in place, and when we back in '94 that the district let go dormant, and when we started putting new controls in, we used those controls that were there for a cost of instead of $100,000+ a building, we're able to do 3 schools for $100,000. But we should upgrade those to the same level of new controls that the other 2 elementary schools and the middle schools have. So we would probably want to leave a few $100,000 of that $1.2 million alone, but there's about $800,000 to repair univents that I think would be better spent, and the 25 at the high school, which would probably be in the $500,000 range. The ones at the elementary school, we spent a lot of money and time on this summer, probably a couple $100,000. we think we think we've got them working in pretty good order. And it's the type of thing that if a univent fan breaks or something happens in one of those, because they're older units that we serviced and got working, we can go to our operating budget to replace a motor or a fan or that type of stuff. I wouldn't see why we would put $800,000 into these units at this time when we have units in much worse condition at the high school.
Can I
So
ask
I
a
think
quick
that's
question?
that's why this topic is on, Holly.
Yeah, you asked to put it on as
Yeah.
far as the level of priority. So,
Can
Yes,
I ask a
Rick?
question here? Is this part of the planned work
no,
for
it is
this
not.
scope? So this is not part of our building committee scope?
Building
True.
committee. Oh, you mean what you're overseeing?
Yeah, the 83 million. Is this part of the 83 million spend?
What Alex is proposing, and we've gone back and forth with it, and he's also spoken to the engineer that the district uses often. What's the name of it, Alex? Paul's team?
E&E.
E&E, I'm sorry. And there was this, because there was what happened was there was univent repairs done to get ready for the COVID start of the school year in the elementary schools, and there was a budget related to that. So Alex had the engineer go in and repair them, make sure they were working to start of school, not necessarily change controls and all, but just make sure they were working. So there was an allowance per se for that scope of work throughout the elementary schools. And what Alex is suggesting is to take a piece of that and apply it to the high school. What we haven't determined yet, and I believe EDS is actually is giving more of a clearer picture of what that would cost. Alex, right? Paul is supposed to get you a real number.
Yeah,
So we don't, Alex.
But where's that money coming from?
He gave us some rough estimates of just under 500,000.
Yeah, but where's this money coming from? Is this school committee budget?
No,
Talking about folding it in.
Yeah, let me jump in. So here's where some of these, where the process has definitely got to get cleared up. So it's not part of the current plan, but so someone correct me if I'm wrong after I finish here. So it's not part of the current plan, but what is part of the current plan, some of that's already been done, or it doesn't seem to be as pressing, as we tried to get to these proper air exchanges and did the repairs. So now you want to take some of what was going to be applied in the elementary school and you want to apply it to the high school. Am I somewhere close there?
Yeah, we did a lot of those repairs with the COVID relief money we got.
Yeah, no, hold on a minute.
So, and it didn't come up to $800,000.
Yeah, I'm actually asking Holly. So, I mean,
Yes.
Are we able to make these changes inside, like the scope and the plan? Are we able to do that without getting RIDE approval? Or
What would have to happen is each school building has its own budget, and that is what RIDE approves. So if any money has to shift within the MOA, you have to do a formal request to shift the funds into a different project. So because we do have some work at the high school, I think there's the 900,000, approximately approved and that's it. So we would have to shift the money. Our concern is, and this is why this is a conversation, because it keeps coming up that the high school really does need this work. Not the trans building, but this one area of the high school. And it is not earmarked as work done in this 79 million. So the only way to do that is to shift money. Our concern as a team is to take money from elementary schools at this point when we really don't know how much work would be needed on the univents is not, we've had a difference of opinion as to whether or not the timing of this is good, but there's no question that these univents need to be addressed in high school. So Alex is just trying to find a path to deal with it. And this was, what came up in a conversation. So we just wanted to put it out there on the table that, we're talking all about this, the COVID throughout the district. And then this is happening that has nothing to do with COVID. It's just an air quality actually in the high school. That's a big issue.
Yeah, but shifting money from where?
Well, Rick, hold on a minute, Rick. Let me jump in here because I'm gonna stick my flag in the ground on this one.
Okay.
So the building committee is not a policy decision-making board. So if there's internal discussions that are happening with the school department and the project manager and all other powers to be, then those things should be ironed out before they come to the building committee, and then the building committee, can kind of vote it up or down. But I do not want us to be put in the middle of uncertainty from an administration level and the experts who are getting paid to do this, and then come to the board and have them kind of mediate the dispute, for lack of better term. So my feeling on this issue, because we're going to move to 6, is that internally, let's come to some decision that you're all on the same page, and then come in front of the committee, because we're not going to mediate that.
Well, let me interject. I don't really, just maybe I misspoke. We weren't looking for mediation here. I think because there was this whole conversation last time about the difference that the $4 million that Rick had mentioned earlier, that could actually be another project. So it was really more about, options. It wasn't about deciding anything tonight. It was just recognizing that this is also an issue at the high school, and to kind of like figure out perhaps other avenues. Because it wasn't 800,000, when we spoke to the engineer, it could have been in excess of that. So there is no question that the bond itself cannot pay for that high school work.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't want to make a decision that reduces the amount in some elementary school to do this project and then come back and find out, we didn't do something in some elementary school. I certainly do not want, yes. I don't think the board, the building committee, I strongly do not feel that, we should be taken down that path. So when you feel comfortable that wouldn't happen, that's when I think the appropriate time to come in front of the board is. I don't have any problem with your, and maybe I'm just sticking the flag in the ground a little too hard, but you can kind of bring us up to speed as to some internal discussions, but they should be very generic. And I definitely, and if there's a move that has to be made to transfer funds with RIDE, then yeah, you guys all have to be pretty well supportive of that before,
Oh, absolutely. I was just explaining how that actually works, because it is approved by each building, not as a whole.
Okay, I appreciate that. Unless somebody has something, I'm going to move to 6. I'm going to move to 6. Update abatement work at Transitional building. Who's got that one?
Louis, do you want to take this one?
So, as part of the first project, which involves the swing space and the development of schematic design and design development, hazardous material testing had to be done in relation with the unit ventilators that are now going to be replaced in this phase of the project. So Emory Environmental did some samples of the material and found them positive. The material was found behind the unit ventilators. There is a cavity that it's used to throw out ventilation at the whole perimeter of the exterior wall. So that is lined with some panels that were found to have asbestos material. This all happened very quickly, but the school was notified right away. They were concerned that this was an ongoing condition. And so that they opted to have Emory go back and do some air sampling testing right away. That was done. Then they asked Emory to file an emergency plan with the Department of Health to have that work immediately abated, and that work was done.
So the work that was done, is this part of the $83 million, of the $79 million bond?
Yes, yes.
So has it been approved by anybody yet?
School committee.
The school committee has
approves it
approved it?
after the fact.
And when was that?
Maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
The
Maybe-
work hadn't been done when we had the school committee meeting. There was a special meeting one evening to go through the process, and because of the level of, because the state was involved, it had to happen within a certain period of time. So there was a school committee meeting explaining the process, and they wanted the work done right away. But this is typical. They'll do this testing in every school. If they find something, it's part of the process. It's part of a right requirement when they go in with their documents for review that these tests were done.
Part of the issue was that we found it right before we were going on a break.
Mhm.
So we needed to get the work done while the school was going to be empty. Otherwise, the school would have had to be made empty to do
Right.
the work.
So it was
Right.
actually pretty good timing considering.
It was done over that Thanksgiving break, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
It was like
yes,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of.
right. So the
Actually,
school
I think we
committee-
had made the decision to go distance learning for that week.
Yes.
So we approved it on a Friday night, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, the Friday before Thanksgiving.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, so is it a change order to somebody's contract? Is it what's the?
No,
How did-
not at all. This work will just be paid through the bond for that particular project, just part of that project. It's just, it would be third-party costs outside of the main scope of work that'll be done when the general contractor is hired. This is
Okay.
relatively typical.
And, okay. So I understand that. I'm just saying that, so I can't find it right now when I'm looking at the school website, but Alex, have you shipped that resolution down to the town at all or no?
I don't recall. I'll have to check.
Okay. So even it's done after the fact, and we know this is going to happen because we're not handicapping vendors and things like that, but just for transparency, if it's something that's coming out of the bond, then that resolution should just get thrown on the docket of a building committee. It doesn't even matter if you passed it in November, honestly, and we don't see it till January, but somebody's looking, it's supposed to get passed by us, so we should see it. So, just ship that resolution. I can't find it, like I say, on your website, but let's, just get it down so that we can put it on a subsequent building committee and all the powers that be see that it got approved.
Okay, I'll get it down.
And Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, you and I had a conversation when we became aware of it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we didn't, Mr. Fiorelli, yes. I knew it kind of happened, and then I'm like, I keep thinking, because some of these other invoices that are not unrelated to this, though, they've got to get down to the town faster so that, people get paid. And this is one that I knew of it, so that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to find, I would have put it on this docket, so just as long as we get it on there. Is there anybody else on 6? All right, let's move to 7, high school transitional building invoice review. I guess AA Asbestos, is that not the same company?
Yes.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so these two invoices are, 6 and 7 are basically updating you on the work, and then the 2 invoices below are in reference to that work.
Oh, okay, so that is the one that they passed on, okay.
Yes.
Whew, okay. So what was the amount?
Holly, the amount for AA asbestos was $13,820.
$13,820.
Correct.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve a payment of $13,820 to AA asbestos
I'll make that
abatement?
motion.
That's moved by Mr. Fiorillo. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I think it was Mr. Lindgren first, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? That's going to pass 8-0. And for the record, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Devon, and Ms. Anderson are absent. B, Corrado Architects reimbursement for Emory Environmental Associates. And what's this for now?
So this is the testing that was done to identify the condition.
Okay.
The invoice that you previously approved, that's for the contractor to actually remove the material under containment.
Was this approved at the school committee already or no?
The actual invoice?
Yeah, anybody aware of that? No?
No. This is, I mean, we put it on this agenda so it would go from here to the school committee to the
All right.
appropriate
So,
channel.
How much is this for?
This is for $1,650.
$1,650. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve? So this is going to get paid through your contract, Mr. Torado?
Yes, well, what we did was we agreed to let that go through as a reimbursable.
Okay,
I'll
so
make
the
that motion as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorillo. So the motion is to reimburse Torado Architects in the amount of $1,650 for Emory Environmental Associates. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Lindgren. Thank you. Any discussion on that?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Foley?
So on the abatement, that was an unexpected cost, correct?
Typically, this testing is done and the report is part of the package that goes to RIDE.
So the 1650 was expected.
Yes, and then the work sometimes would happen during construction, or in this case, we did it prior to construction. So it's all costs that we would typically see.
You should know that the cost estimates that were submitted and approved by RIDE included an allowance for asbestos removal in the event that it was found.
That's good to hear. So my question really just came down to was this an expected sum as part of our package, or are we kind of going above and beyond our expected costs with relation to this particular topic?
It was an expense that was accounted for as part of an allowance. So it's included in the 79 million that RIDE approved.
Okay, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I would just like some sort of editorializing on these type of expenses, whether this was a planned expense or it was a planned expense, but it's double what we expected, those types of information. So if this was all kind of planned and expected and part of our estimate, obviously I don't have any problem with saying yes on it. The ones that really are quite a bit different, then those are the ones I'd like to know more about. So thank you.
It just happened, and we don't mean to present this in a rush to you. It happened because of the shift of the replacement of the unit ventilator from a future phase to this current phase, necessitating that test be done right away.
Right. But it was planned work that's
Yes.
falling within the estimates. So to me,
Yes.
I can't see that we would be holding that process up when this entire project has been approved by us. I think when it goes above and beyond what we expected, or if it's work that we did not plan, that's when I think we should know, quick, like what's happening.
Well, let me just interject there. I think the issue here is that Mr. Torado has a contract that was approved by all the necessary bodies, and this is in a way somewhat of a amendment to that contract, right? I mean, so I understand it's 1650, and I do understand too, like, you know, on some of the bigger stuff, but a lot of the professional services, they got approved at an amount not to exceed or whatever. And so when there's things that are funneling in and out of there, I think it's a good idea to at least, like I say, it doesn't have to hold up the project, but I think it's necessary for transparency to be there.
Yeah, and you know, we were glad to do it. We were glad to help. My insurance company doesn't like me to do reimbursements, particularly when it involves asbestos or hazardous materials. We did it because if we had not agreed to do that, you would have had to go out to bid for those services. That would have delayed the whole process. So we were just trying to be helpful.
Yeah, and we've crossed this bridge before. We want to limit the reimbursements as well. So
please,
yes, that keeps all of us, or some of us, you know, we're happy when that happens. Anyway, so let's move on to 8, which is high school security project invoice review and vote. And this one is for ADS construction.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Rick.
I think I had jumped in during the discussion portion of that 7B item.
Did I not get a vote on that?
I don't think we did an actual vote.
No, we had a first and a second.
I appreciate you keeping track of that, Rick. Keep me out of trouble. So we had a motion by Mr. Fiorello and was seconded by Mr. Lindgren to pay for reimburse Torado Associates in the amount of $16.50 for Emory Environmental Associates. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? That motion carries 8-0. Thank you again, Rick. And now we will move on to 8, which is high school security project invoice review and vote. This is on the master lease, which we have the fortune of being the building committee for every other master lease. We anointed us, so that's why this is on our docket. And so the first one here is the ADS construction. I believe that this was passed somewhere by the school committee. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
And so do we have an amount for that?
So 118.
$118,381.87.
I didn't catch that.
$118,381.87.
Okay, so this would be to authorize payment for, I don't have the resolution from the school committee, but I know they passed it, to ADS construction in an amount not to exceed $118,381.87. And could someone just bring us up to speed as to what that work actually is or was?
Sure, that entails the work that has been completed to date at the high school site associated with the security improvement project, mainly the concrete work, some of the site work, the demo. It also incorporates the associated costs for the mobilization and the permits for that work itself.
Okay. And so this is the first drawdown of the 832,000, right? We don't have any other.
Yes, this is the first.
That is correct.
Okay. So for the committee's edification, I mean, the council school committee passed an $832,000 master lease was for us, the security project and some Chromebooks. And this is the first installment of that. So I don't know if there's any questions. Mr. Fiorello, would you like to make a motion?
I'd be happy to. I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Fiorello moves to approve the payment to ADS Construction in an amount of $118,381.87. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Was that Amy?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or any other comments?
So, Mr. Chairman, this you said was outside of the bond issue?
We are
This
also,
is a separate
yes,
arrangement. Okay,
yes. We're the building committee for the $832,000 master lease too.
that's what I thought I heard you say. Okay,
Congratulations.
no good deed goes unpunished.
Just another quick question. Is Colliers part of overseeing that work?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is a discussion that we are going to have because that they are, and they should be in the work that they do for the master lease should be reimbursed through that project, not through the bond issue. So, but that's a story and a question and a conversation for another day. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those again? That passes 8-0 as well. Thank you. And now 9, third-party design development estimate for McLaughlin and Transitional Building. Proposal review and vote is a proposal from Mayakota Consulting.
Yes. So part of the process for each of these projects would to have a third-party estimator review the design development document. So although the Toronto's group has an estimator, all projects of this size typically have 2 estimators. So then you have cost comparison. So you know that there's no surprises. And then once they do, they will have the DD documents, the design development documents sent to them, as well as Lewis's team would have their DD sent to their estimator. And then we would do a cost analysis to see where the delta is and go through them very clearly. And this will happen at every project. It's part of the soft cost. It's an anticipated cost. And RIDE wants to see it. Of course, it's on behalf of the town. So you know that when these plans go out and these numbers come back in, you have 2 estimates that you can feel pretty confident in. And we went out to 6 different estimators in Mayakota. Kate, we worked with her a lot. She's actually very, very good. She's a minority, which is great as well. And she had the lowest bid. So what we'd like to do, and which is Colliers does very often, is we would do it as a reimbursable under our contract with no markup or anything. We would just like do it through our contract and control it that way. And then it would just be part of our invoice. But it would be billed, those 2 schools, this would be a part of their soft cost expense.
So in effect, it's budgeted in the
It is
inside.
absolutely budgeted. There is money for this, yes.
And what is,
You worked with them before?
You have?
yeah, they worked on the public safety.
Oh, great.
And what's the amount?
It's a total of, wait, John, do you have that? Hang on a second.
Yes, I do. $22,430 for both schools.
Right, so there's, for the transitional, it's 9,680, and then the balance is for the McLaughlin.
Okay, so, all right, so the motion would be to reimburse Colliers for, so very similar to, for Mayakota. Am I saying that right? What did you say, Mayakota?
Mayakota.
Mayakota Consulting for third-party design development estimating. Anybody want to make that one?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Do we have a second? Don't little jump. Nobody? Gotta need one.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Okay, so this is not something that's going through, you know, any of the, this didn't get approved by the school committee or anything like that, right?
No, we haven't
No.
we haven't awarded her or anything until this is the first of the process.
Yeah, okay. All right, we have a motion, a second to approve in the amount of 22, or not, in an amount not to exceed 22,430 even, I believe.
Yes.
And have a second. Is there any discussion or any further comments, questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Rick.
So the way it's written here, this is a proposal review. I feel comfortable that Colliers has reviewed the various proposals and is presenting this one as the select or the selected firm.
Yes.
Is the proposal something that was put up for us to look at ahead of time?
We actually called 6 different estimators and gave them the breakdown, which we received from the Toronto, and sent them the design documents so they would have a sense of what they were bidding. And that's how, and then they sent back these estimates. 3 actually weren't interested, and then we received 3, and Miyakota's was the least expensive, and she's very reputable. So going forward, I mean, every district is different. We can give you all of the proposals. We could do a letter of recommendation. We'll do whatever it is you'd like us to do. But we did this through an email to the estimators.
That's fine. I'm just trying to understand what sort of process we have and what we will plan to do moving forward. I don't feel like I have to look at every single proposal that comes in. But if you're willing to stand behind a particular proposal and recommend it, I think that should be part of our at least record for the meeting. And I'm surprised it wasn't added to the documents that we were to review for tonight. If we go ahead and approve this proposal, then Miyakota is going to do the work, and we're going to basically pay the 22.4 moving forward, assuming that there's no change in the bill, not to exceed price. Would we need to, as a committee, to approve the payment of the 22.4, or because we're accepting her proposal as is, will this suffice moving forward? That's kind of a general question to the committee, those more experienced in building committees than I.
Yes, so the answer to that last question was yes, that if you approve it tonight, then you're approving the payment in the amount not to exceed 22,430. I do agree. I think that's kind of my bad here. I think that there should be a little bit, we could make this a little clearer. And yeah, if there's a proposal review, obviously there should be something for us to review. But yeah, tonight you're gonna, if you were to vote for this, then you're approving that payment. And I guess the reason you probably just want to have the proposal in the future too would be if there was something that came up and they needed a change order. We don't know what they've agreed to actually do for this 22,430. So yeah, it'd be nice to at least have that in case there was a question that came out, if there was a need to actually amend the contract.
So I understand. We sent them the scope of work, and this is for a design development estimate, right? So that's the formal document that they will give back to the district for review. So are you saying, typically we would do this, or we could write a cover letter listing those other prices that came in so you can see the different prices, which would be fine, but not necessarily the proposal itself. So I want to clear so I don't, the next time I'm.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, that's probably me just not understanding exactly what they do. And
Okay.
so, yeah, So looking for a proposal, I mean, I'd just be conventionally, there would be, there would be some sort of document, but so, yeah, that's just me not knowing what I'm talking about. I think it's probably would be good, yeah, if you just had, some sort of memo or a cover letter that just explain, what's happening here. And I think that probably would suffice, but I don't want to speak for everybody else.
I know in the past we've had basically a packet with like a breakdown of what everybody was, the topics that they were covering and the prices, and then there was just the recommendation from Colliers. I think that would be something that would be great. Alex, I can't remember. We just did something like this a few months ago where we had a
Yeah, when the bids actually came in, the formal bids for the bigger project, we had a list in the back that broke them down. Typically for a proposal like this, we don't, but it's not a big deal. So we can just list, whenever we go out for bids, we'll come in with a cover letter with all the prices listed behind it, as well as the awarding, the one that we're recommending. That should do it, I think.
Holly, I would add to that just a brief scope of work as to what they're quoting on.
Okay, sure.
I have one more question, Holly. Are we going to do this again during detailed design?
This will be design development, and that's, typically we could sometimes do it at schematic as well as DD, but the schematic design was so far in, and because of the potential changes that were going to happen, it just seemed like it made more sense to spend the money at DD. That'll happen, and then it goes to, typically the RIDE will approve at 60% construction. And it depends on the size of the project, whether or not you decide to do that at that point. Louis, you're muted, but typically we could do it at SD and then DD, and then sometimes we do it one final step if that's a requirement. We could get a quote on that if that's something the district would want to do.
Yeah, I think so. So as Holly mentioned, this is typically done for larger projects. We've done it for both projects we did with Colliers in Pawtucket. It's interesting that there is deltas between the two estimates. So then there's a process of trying to figure out how you reconcile them. But it certainly is a built in suspenders approach to making sure that the project comes within the budget.
I was just trying to figure out, Louis, whether we were going to end up doing this a second time around and paying another, whatever, 22 or.
I think it would be worth waiting to see what we get from design development.
Mm-hmm.
We are much further along the development of the plans than just design development. We are currently at least maybe 30% construction documents. So I suggest that we wait to see what we get back as estimates, see how good they compare with each other. We're going to do a 60% construction cost estimate with PMNC, an independent cost estimator, and then you can assess whether it's worth spending an additional amount to have this other group look at 60%.
And Miyakota's numbers are actually very competitive because this is actually two properties, two schools. So it's really, $9,000 and $12,000 respectively. So it's not too bad. Anyway, so this is actually a really interesting process to go through and see how on point the budgets are. And when we do the other projects, these two projects will be general contractors, but because of how the schedule has to work going forward, the other projects, you may decide to go construction manager, and this piece of it would be part of their scope. So you wouldn't have it outside of the general contractor the way this is. Because a construction manager does this automatically within, and then uses the architect's estimate to do the comparison.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those against, anybody? That passes 8-0 as well. Thank you. Mike, I don't think, is there anyone in attendance from the public? Was not. Okay, so there's no public comment. And now schedule the next meeting. So what are we looking at for that? Did we ever agree on what night this is going to be, or anybody know?
I don't
I
think
like
so.
Mondays.
I forget where we are in this process, so
I believe last time it was too early to set a certain date based on people's commitments. But so we left it open to decide today. Louis, are there any days that absolutely don't work for you? Because it's critical
I
that-
give up. I gave up on that one, but let me just mention. So we're gonna need about a week and a half to get a set of design development drawings out to both cost estimators. I think they're gonna need 2-3 weeks. And depending where we go with that, I suggest that at that time, we set the time for the review so that the building committee has the time to review what comes back as far as the estimates and the drawings, and then at that time, set the meeting.
Well, and we'll need a vote from the building committee in order to submit the DDs. So we'll have to do that prior to. That's a requirement, Louis.
To submit the DDs, right.
Right. So if we do a meeting like a couple of weeks prior to that date, so they have time to review them, or a week at least.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, I don't know the date exactly when we're gonna have the package for the committee to review.
Mhm.
When we have that package, let's set the date. That gives them a couple of weeks to review what we send them, and then after that, we submit to RIDE.
so the next meeting is TBD.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So excuse me, just one more thing. Going forward regarding invoices, if this is going to be the format to get invoices processed, then although the DD review is actually huge and a big part of this, if we're anticipating having an invoice next month for the school security, there would need to be a meeting. Otherwise, any invoices that goes in front of this board would have to wait. So for that reason alone, even if it's a quick meeting, it might be necessary to schedule them for the smaller items.
Sure. So let's we're gonna have we'll have some discussions after the beginning of the year and make this a lot easier, and I'll be more on the ball. So yeah, if there's an invoice that comes up that, like I said, if it's in the budget, we're not holding up the project. We've never done that in the past, but we are going to approve them at some point in time. So you're going to need, we're going to trust your judgment on those. Obviously, when it's something that's a major change order, then that's gonna, we're gonna need to talk about that. So, but if they're under the normal course of business and they are budgeted and in the plan, the approved plan, then yeah, we will approve them, but not, we don't have to pre-approve them,
Prior to school committee. So if the school committee is happening first, they can go there and then come here. Was that okay that happened tonight?
So I think after we get through the TBD, the next meeting, we're going to try to set a date. And the feeling was that we wanted to at least have ours at a time where it gave other public bodies the flexibility to get it on their agenda. So a Monday, does give 1 day extra to post 48 hours for a Thursday school committee meeting. So, and I think that's the, the course of action would be building committee, school committee, and then the council later. So that was the reason for the Mondays. And I do believe there needs to be some flexibility so that in case that needs to happen, it's available. So, but we get a little time we'll get that all ironed out by the time we get to our next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So I need a motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Fiorello moves adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Lincoln. I'd like to thank you guys. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Against? So we are adjourned at 8:11 p.m. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
New Year.
Good.
New Year.